Hello and welcome to Seymour Sports Corner. I'm your host, David Seymour. For those of you joining me for the first time, I am an aspiring sports broadcaster. Just looking to get myself familiarized in front of the camera and in front of the microphone. So I appreciate your support and thank you for tuning in. We're going to open up this show a little differently today. Today's kind of a reflection day for me. I'm on the eve of celebrating 2 years removed from being in the Department of Corrections. So 2 years ago tomorrow, I was released from Florida DOC. And so it's been really interesting as I realized that today that I was able to sit back and reflect on where I was just a few years ago and where I'm at today and the strides that I've made in the last 2 years. To be sitting here being able to do this, something that I always dreamed about, and something that I talked about that I was going to do while I was inside, laying on my bunk, talking to my bunkie or whatever, that this is what I was going to do. And as I sat around and talked sports as ESPN or Fox Sports or whatever the case was on, or while we were watching games, to listen to all these guys talk about that this is what I should be doing. And so to kind of just be realizing that and see where I'm at and what I've done and how far I still have to go, right? It's not over yet. The story's not written. There's no end yet. We're still scribbling some chapters here. So appreciate you guys joining me and support me in this. So enough of the mushy gushy stuff. We're going to move right into what we have today. Really like to start with talking about the Major League Baseball playoffs, right? You got both the Phillies and the Rangers are up 2-0. So I'm pretty confident that we're going to have a Phillies-Rangers World Series, which I think will be probably the best matchup of the teams that we have remaining. And I'd be excited to see that too. I'd really like to see the Phillies win. Not that I'm a Phillies fan, but I'm a huge Bryce Harper fan. And so I'd really like to see Bryce get himself a World Series. He really kind of got robbed as he left the Washington Nationals. The same year he leaves, they go and win the World Series. And so I can only imagine the sting that he felt with that. He poured his blood, sweat, and tears into that team trying to get him there, and they could never seem to get there. And then the year he leaves, they win it. So I can only imagine the sting that he felt from that. And so then he gets there last year, and of course he loses to the Astros. So I'd like to see him get back and get another shot at getting his ring. He's one of those guys that I just, you root for. I like everything about Bryce Harper, and so I'm rooting for a Phillies World Series this year. We're going to move into football, man. So I really want to address this Caleb Williams thing, right? I was already going to come in here and talk about Caleb Williams today. As you guys all know, last week I figured that USC would beat Notre Dame. I was surprised that Notre Dame was a favorite in that game. I really thought USC would go in there and just dominate them, and it turned out to be the exact opposite. And I've noticed a trend with Caleb Williams, right? Anytime he plays a decent defense, Utah or now Notre Dame, he can't seem to win. Utah owns him, and they play good defense. Notre Dame completely demolished him. I think he went from first in the Heisman race and dropped all the way to fourth. But 3 interceptions and a half will do that to you, right? And so with that being said, right, we've got all of these reports coming out that there's only 5 teams in the NFL he's willing to play for. And we've had a few instances in the past, right, where we've had guys that refused to play for certain teams, right? And it's understandable, right? You're coming in and you're about to put your career in the hands of some organization, right? And there's just certain organizations that aren't very good organizations, when John Elway was coming out, he had no interest in playing for the Colts, right? The owner at the time was not a very good guy. And there were all kinds of reports swirling around that ended up being true, even though he was denying them. And so John Elway refused to play for the Colts. A couple of years later, you had Bo Jackson refused to report to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, the thing about both of those players is they had promising baseball careers that they could turn to instead of going into the NFL draft. So they weren't worried about it. Bo Jackson obviously kept playing baseball while he was in the NFL, but John Elway said he'd rather play baseball than play for the Colts. And they eventually found a trade partner and got him to the Broncos, and we all know the rest is history there. Bo Jackson refused to play for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, completely sat out. They did not trade him, and he actually re-entered the draft the next year and went from whatever first or second round, whatever round it was that he was drafted in, all the way to a 7th round pick to the Oakland Raiders. And it may even been the LA Raiders at the time, they've been just the Raiders, right? And then the most recent case is Eli Manning refusing to play for the Chargers. His dad advised him that would be a bad move, that the Chargers were a bad organization, and he needed to find a different team to play for. And so collectively, that family, who has a rich football history, said we're not gonna play for this organization because we don't have a chance to win here. And it was proven all throughout Philip Rivers' career. For those of you that don't remember or don't know, the Chargers did draft Eli Manning, first overall, and he had no intention of playing for him. And so towards the end of the first round, the Giants selected Philip Rivers, traded Philip Rivers and I think another first-round pick to the Chargers for the rights to Eli Manning. So we've had a few instances of guys coming out of college and not wanting to play for certain teams. And Caleb Williams has come out and stated that he can make as much money in NIL deals if he stays for his senior year as he could on his NFL rookie contract. And that's probably pretty close to the truth. But he's listed 5 teams, and only 5 teams that he's willing to play for. Now, in that, you would have thought he would probably pick the 5 best franchises in the NFL. Teams like the Patriots that have a rich history, or one of them he did pick. He picked the 49ers, right? The 49ers have a history of great ownership, great organization. They run things and do things the right way. The Patriots, ever since Robert Kraft had bought them, have run things the right way and done things the right way. The Cowboys are on there, on his list. And for the most part, Jerry Jones does things the right way, though he can't ever seem to get over the top, right? He can't get out of his own way. The reason him and Jimmy Johnson didn't work out is because he needs yes men. The reason he didn't go after Sean Payton is because he needs yes men. And the truth of the matter is that's why the Cowboys haven't won anything since the 90s. Is because Jerry Jones wants to be in control of everything that's going on. And he tends to meddle a little too much and screw things up. So the Cowboys and the 49ers. 49ers, a great organization, stellar history going almost all the way back to their inception, right? And the Cowboys, big brand, right? Jerry Jones, they're always contenders, but they're really pretenders because they can't ever get over the hump, right? And so those two organizations make quite a bit of sense. The other one that makes a little bit of sense is the Giants, because it's New York. It's the biggest media market almost in the world, right? So to go be the face of the franchise of the best team in the biggest market makes a lot of sense. Even though, the Giants, yes, they've won 2 Super Bowls recently, but they're never that consistently good team, right? And so then the other 2 teams that he picks are the Vikings, that have never done anything, and they're in the middle of nowhere, so that doesn't even make any sense. And then the Raiders, big brand, but bad ownership, right? They can't keep head coaches. They've always got some kind of drama. They've always got problem players that are causing a fuss and doing all kinds of things. Antonio Brown, Chandler Jones most recently. And they just can't ever seem to get everything together. They bring in Devontae Adams because he wants to play with Derek Carr, and they immediately trade Derek Carr the very next year. They signed Josh McDaniels to this wild and crazy contract, and he's not done anything to turn that team around. So I look at his choices, and they just don't make a whole lot of sense to me as to why you would pick these 5 franchises. The other part of this is recently there's some reports coming out that Caleb Williams has said that his representation is putting all teams on notice that whoever drafts him, he wants ownership stock in the team. He wants to be made partial owner. This kid hasn't played a single down in football in the NFL. By making him a part owner means you can never get rid of him. You can't trade him away. You can't. You can cut him, but he's part owner. So he can't ever sign anywhere else other than the team that he's playing for, because then that becomes a huge conflict of interest unless you buy him out, which kind of makes sense on his part. But what gives this kid the right? At 21, 22 years old, however old he is, has never played a down of professional football. All of this tape that we have on you, yes, you're a Heisman-winning quarterback. You're a human highlight reel, but you're only that against weak defenses. Anytime you have to play a real defense, anytime you have to play a team that's going to hit you in the mouth and be physical with you, you can't do anything, right? You get bottled up, locked up, and shut down every time you play anybody with a decent defense. So if every NFL team has a better defense than every team in college, which is a fact, people joke all the time about, Alabama could go beat the Jaguars, or, Alabama could go beat the Chicago Bears, or Oregon could go beat whatever team's the worst in the league at the moment, right? And it's funny to joke about that, but the truth of the matter is that's absolutely false, right? You have 53 of the best guys on an NFL roster, and on a college roster, you're starting 22. There might be 7 of them out of all 22 that make it to the NFL, that make it, right? 3 or 4 of those are only going to be on a practice squad. 2 of those are probably going to be some rotational players, and you might have 1 guy that's actually a full-time starter. So this idea that a college team could go beat a pro team, while it's great to joke about and use to compare and just really hammer a team for how bad they're playing, the truth is that's never going to happen. So if every NFL defense is better than any college offense that he's ever played against, and anytime you've played against a decent or great college defense, you've absolutely get manhandled and look pedestrian as all get out, then why would I think that you have the right to dictate where you go? Because you're obviously not as special as you think you are, or as special as you've been told you are. And I watched the kid, and I jumped in on all of the same hype that everybody else did, right? That, oh, he's a lock to go number one. He's going to be a franchise changer. But I'm starting to change my tune a little bit, not only because of the way he's played against good defenses, but now you add this diva aspect to it, right? I only want to play for 5 teams. I'm going to go back to college if the right team isn't going to pick me. And if I get picked, I deserve to be part owner. I deserve to make some decisions. And that's not what you want out of your quarterback, right? I spend a lot of time listening to Colin Cowherd on Fox. And one of the things he always talks about is attributes that you want in your quarterback and attributes that you don't want in your quarterback, right? And he always uses Baker Mayfield and Johnny Manziel as things that you don't want, right? I don't want that cockiness and that bravado. And, I want a guy that shows up, comes to work, and is professional, right? This isn't very professional. This is diva. This is the kind of stuff that I want from my wide receiver. If I've got a diva wide receiver, I usually got a ball. I don't need my quarterback to be a diva. I need my quarterback to be a leader. And so I would say that this hurts his draft stock. It hurts my opinion of him for sure. Not that my opinion means a damn thing to anybody. But it's instances like that. It's little ticks like this that you see that lets you know somebody's not going to be as good as you think they are, or there's going to be something. I'm a huge Ryan Leaf fan, not Ryan Leaf the football player, but Ryan Leaf the man. Seen a lot of things about him, right, and his recovery, right, and it's a phenomenal story. So I'm a huge fan of Ryan Leaf the man, but Ryan Leaf the player, right? Ryan Leaf, the second overall pick to the San Diego Chargers, Ryan Leaf, it was a super huge diva and very selfish and thought that things should be a certain way because they had always been that way for him. He always got to make these demands and he was always the best at what he did. The guy was a complete and utter bust, is what we call him in the NFL. I do really enjoy what he says, that says you can't call anybody that was a second overall pick in the NFL a bust. Maybe his career didn't turn out the way you wanted it to be, but for him to get there, and here's the same scenario, right? I don't know that you could necessarily call Caleb Williams a bust because his athletic ability is through the roof and he checks most of all the boxes, but he's starting to uncheck some of those, right? What kind of leader are you really? What kind of person are you really that you feel like that without having any kind of performance on the biggest stage, you can come in and make these demands? I don't think that there's anything wrong with a player refusing to play for certain franchises, right? One of the teams that we're looking at that might have the number 1 overall pick are the Arizona Cardinals. They have a long history of being really bad, or even when they rebuild, that they tear it down really quickly, right? Reports are starting to come out that they have a toxic workplace. And as a Washington Commanders fan, I already know how those reports go. When your owners get reported for toxic workplaces, right? It never turns out pretty. It's always a long, drawn out. So if Arizona ends up with the number 1 pick, I don't blame anybody for saying I refuse to go there. But to say that I'm only going to go to one of 5 teams, and when I get there, you better be ready to sign over part of your franchise to me. What's your ownership stake going to be? 3%, 5%? What are you looking for here? And what makes you think that anything that you've done up to this point warrants that? You look at Tom Brady, 7-time Super Bowl champion. I mean, he's the most accomplished quarterback to ever play the game, right? And he's just now barely getting into the ownership circle, right? He's got a small portion of the Raiders that he bought into, so not even any of the teams that he ever played for. If anybody deserved a percentage of a team that they played for, it would be Tom Brady. And he doesn't even have that. Nowhere in his contract was he ever able to get that. So where do you get off coming into this and coming into the NFL, never having played it down and saying that that's what you get? So I'm really interested to see how this Caleb Williams thing plays out. Um, I really think that I want to start pumping the brakes on building this kid up, because I don't think that he's necessarily going to be everything that he's being predicted to be. And I think some of that's gone to his head. Quite a bit of it's gone to his head, it seems like. And so, yeah, uh, yeah, I'm pumping the brakes on Caleb Williams. All right. So that being said, we'll break down some of the games from last week. That Washington Oregon game was absolutely must see TV. I had taken Oregon, and I had seen them play a little bit, a couple of different games. So I really thought I had a feel for how physical they were. I did not know how physical Washington was. Them boys are hitting hard. Brings me back to USC, right? USC has to play Oregon and Washington and Utah. All of these teams that play good defense. And so I think Caleb Williams and USC lose 3 or 4 games this year, just based on their performance against teams with good defenses. And Washington has a legit defense. Bo Nix still looked great, but Michael Penix jumped up the charts for the Heisman watch after that game-winning drive that he led. Super good game. I wish I could find a replay of it to rewatch it, because it was a fun game to watch. Back and forth. Defense and offenses were playing lights out. Oregon got behind early, marched back, and then the final drive, obviously, Michael Penix did his thing. The Notre Dame USC game was super disappointing. I really thought that was going to be a really good game, and it just wasn't. Notre Dame jumped on them from the word go and didn't let up, and so I think Caleb Williams and that offense tried to make a comeback, but when you play zero defense at all, it's going to be a problem, and that's Lincoln Riley's downfall. Remember, Oklahoma's defense was left in shambles after he left. He cares nothing about the defensive side of the ball. And unfortunately, the old mantra that defense wins championships is kind of out the window. You don't have to have a Baltimore Ravens, 2000s Baltimore Ravens defense or an 85 Bears defense to win a championship anymore, but you have to have a defense that's able to get you a stop when you need one. I was watching an interview with Patrick Mahomes not too long ago. They were talking about how he has the highest winning percentage of the NFL in the NFL history, when trailing by 10 points or more. And somebody asked him, how does he do that? He says it takes everybody, right? He's got to be able to go in and score points, and the offense has got to know what their job is and go and execute their job. But on the flip side of that, you need the defense to be able to make stops. They have to buy in and know that they're going to be able to make those stops. And USC's defense cannot make a stop. I could probably pick up 11 guys around here, and we could probably score a touchdown against USC's defense. And again, that's probably not really true. But that's just, an example of how bad they really are. I'm super impressed with North Carolina. Not that Drake May's put on this lights out show or anything, but I think what North Carolina is doing is special. Matt Brown's really got them boys playing. They've been in some tough, close contests, and they've pulled it out. They've been in some blowouts, and they've kept their foot on the gas. And so I really think going forward, man, if they can keep it going, they have a good chance of being in the ACC championship, and who knows, maybe being in the college football playoff if they keep playing the way that they're playing. In the NFL, I was really surprised by the San Francisco-Cleveland game. I think Cleveland quietly has the best defense in the NFL. Um, and we don't ever talk about it, right? And it's an absolute shame that we don't talk about it. I heard Dan Byer on Fox Sports um, radio on Sunday, and it really kind of irked me because I guess a fan had made a comment about how he was upset that all of the news was about how San Francisco lost the game and not about how Cleveland won the game. Dan Byer made a comment about, of course, that's what it's about. We don't talk about Cleveland unless it's about Deshaun Watson. And that's the problem with the national media, right? We latch on to these stories, and they're all negative stories, right? We latch on to figuring out if Deshaun Watson's going to play, and who cares if the guy ever plays another down of football again, right? Why are we worried about Cleveland based on what's going on with Deshaun Watson? Yes, he's making $230 million guaranteed, but the guy sexually assaulted 22 women. Why is he the story that we're following at Cleveland? Why aren't we following the fact that they quietly have the best defense in the NFL? They're the only defense to slow down or stop the San Francisco 49ers offense since Brock Purdy took over as quarterback, right? And why are we jumping the gun on this, see, I told you so, Brock Purdy's not elite? Why are we so quick to tear this guy down, but yet we won't build him up? He lost his first game as a starter where he started and finished it, right? He played his first bad game in the NFL, 10 games in as a starter, right? No, actually, I'm sorry, 13 games in as a starter. And he played one bad game, all right? And even in that bad game, right, he still drove them down the field and had them in position to win. If the kicker doesn't miss the field goal, they win the game, right? Even with as bad as he played. Now, a lot of that's credit due to the defense and all of the supporting cast. And had he played better, maybe they're not in that position. But he's still a young quarterback that lost his first ever game, 13 games into his young career, played his first ever bad game, and still drove him down the field and gave him a position, put him in a position to win, right? How is that not elite? Right? What are we judging elite on because he hasn't won a Super Bowl? Oh, I'm sorry, as a rookie, he took him to the NFC Championship game and probably takes him to the Super Bowl if he doesn't blow out his elbow, right? This entire mantra that, 13 games or whatever isn't a big enough sample size, but one game is a big enough sample size to say, see, I told you. And I've heard that over a few different talk shows, and I truly agree with that, right? Because you're going to tell me that the kid's not elite, but he's only ever lost one game in 13 starts. And even in the one start that he plays bad, he still puts him in a position to win the game. And on the flip side, he's playing against what's arguably the best defense that's not being talked about. We're going to follow around Deshaun Watson and figure out how his shoulder's feeling. But we're not going to talk about the stellar defense that Cleveland's playing. And if you really go back and look at their games, that's the only reason that they've won the games that they've won, even when Deshaun Watson was playing. Deshaun Watson's not playing lights out. Deshaun Watson's not playing like Houston Deshaun Watson. And in all honesty, I kind of hope he never gets it back. I would love to see him just dissipate off into the nothing, right? So that we can quit talking about this guy. So that this guy can quit getting chatted about and built up and put in front of a camera. And we don't need all of that, right? That's the guy that we shouldn't be talking about. What we should be talking about is Cleveland's defense on a regular basis because they are good. And it really sucks that a defense that good, kind of like that New York Jets defense, right? A defense that good is going to get wasted because they don't have the right pieces on offense. The Jets are playing a lot better. They upset the Eagles. And the Eagles are not looking the same, right? I'm going to start asking the same question about Jalen Hurts that I've been asking about Lamar Jackson. When are they going to regret paying him the money? Because we're seeing the same thing in both places, right? We're seeing two new play callers. We're seeing two quarterbacks that usually use their legs that are now being forced to be pocket passers because they got big contracts and we can't risk getting you hurt, you know? So we're not going to call those option plays and those design quarterback runs as much. And that's what your entire game is built off, but we've got to protect our asset. We've given you each over $250 million, so you need to figure out how to throw the ball. Jalen Hurts is probably a better thrower of the football than Lamar Jackson is. The biggest knock on him, even way back in college, was his inability to throw the deep ball. His deep ball accuracy isn't that great. That's what their entire passing game is built on, is deep ball throwing, right? They set up the run, chuck it, right? That's why they went out and got A.J. Brown. That's why they have Devontae Smith. So it'll be interesting to see how the Eagles' offense plays out. The Jets seem to have found a gear and are kind of humming. We'll see what happens with Zach Wilson if he's really able to put it together. Right now, Nathaniel Hackett's looking like a great coach because he's got Zach Wilson playing at least steady, right? And if you can get Zach Wilson to play steady, you got a great running game to help protect him, and you've got a great defense. And all of those are things that carry well late into the season when it starts getting cold. So it'll be interesting to see where the Jets go from here. Miami's crazy. The Dolphins spotted Carolina 14 points and then beat them by 21. I remember seeing the ticker at the bottom of the TV, and I saw it was 14-0, and I said, what in the world is going on right now? And then all of a sudden, they're winning by 21, and Tyreek Hill's doing backflips with people's cell phones, and it was wild to see that happen. My Commanders won probably the best game that they've played collectively. The defense still gave up a ton of yards, but they held them when they needed to, kept them out of the end zone when they needed to, got a couple interceptions when they needed to. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out going forward. The one thing that I will say is that I think Sam Howell's a legit franchise quarterback. The kid's been sacked 34 times. They have to do something about that offensive line. I know some of those sacks are, him being a young guy that's holding on to the ball too long and all of that. But I will say that they got to do something about that offensive line. The one stat that I've noticed that keeps getting repeated every time they're playing somebody is so-and-so team only had X amount of sacks coming into this game, and now they have that many sacks today. Buffalo only had 4 or 5 sacks coming into the game. They ended up with 9. Last week, Atlanta only had 5 sacks coming into the game. They got 5 sacks in that game. So something's got to be done about that offensive line. Jacksonville's defense looks extremely good. Is keeping them in a lot of games. And they really probably had their best game of this season all the way around this past week against Indianapolis. They got a short week. They've got New Orleans coming up with Trevor Lawrence had a little knee injury towards the end of the game, so he says he's confident that he'll be able to go. So we'll see what that looks like this coming Thursday. Yeah, that's really what I got for last week's game. So I guess we'll get right into this week's picks. So I got 4 college games for you guys. I got Penn State at Ohio State. Ohio State's a 4.5-point favorite. I'm going to take Penn State in the upset. I think they're just playing on a different level. Ohio State doesn't look like the same Ohio State that we've seen in years past. So I like Penn State for the upset. Got Tennessee at Alabama. Alabama's a 9-point favorite. I like Tennessee to cover that. I don't know that Tennessee wins in Alabama, but I do like Tennessee to cover that. You got Duke at FSU. FSU's a 14-point favorite. I like Duke to cover the 14. They play really solid defense, and they got some pretty solid offense. FSU's been letting people hang around that don't deserve to hang around, and Duke does deserve to hang around. It wouldn't shock me if Duke upsets them. I don't think they will, but it wouldn't shock me. But I do like Duke to cover. They're not going to lose by 2 touchdowns. Then you got Utah at USC. USC is a 7-point favorite. I'm going to take Utah for the upset. They just seem to have USC's number. Caleb Williams cannot beat Utah. Until he does, I don't believe that he will. So I'm going to take Utah to win it. Penn State to win, Tennessee to cover, Duke to cover, and Utah to win. In the NFL, we got the Jacksonville Jaguars are at the New Orleans Saints on Thursday night. New Orleans is a 1-point favorite, so it's really a pick'em game. I like Jacksonville in this one. New Orleans lost to Houston last week. In Houston, D'Amico Ryan should be coach of the year. With that being said, I like Jacksonville to go in and upset New Orleans. Not that I think it'll be a real upset. 1-point favorite's more of a pick'em game, in my opinion. But I just think Jacksonville's a better football team. Trevor Lawrence is the better quarterback, so as long as he's able to play, I like Jacksonville. If he's not able to play, we might have to relook at that. Washington is a 2.5-point favorite at the Giants. I'm going to take Washington. The Giants are just a bad football team. I do not know if Daniel Jones is going to be available or not. If he is, that might be one to relook at. We really struggle against Daniel Jones for some reason. I don't know. I can't even say it's his mobility because we play well against most mobile quarterbacks. Daniel Jones, just for whatever reason, seems to have our number. So it'll be interesting to see if he's playing or not. But I think Washington's really kind of starting to put it together. We just got to do a better job of protecting that quarterback. Buffalo's a 9-point favorite at New England. I'm going to take Buffalo. New England's just a bad football team. They're depleted of talent, and Bill Belichick's just not been able to pull his Bill Belichick magic of pulling all of these old, washed-up players in and letting them play for a year, and they have career years, or these 6th-round picks that come in and out of nowhere and make something of themselves. He's just not having that luck. They're drafting bad. They're signing bad free agents. They're getting stuck under bad contracts, and they're just void of talent in New England right now. So I like Buffalo. Cleveland -3 at Indianapolis. I'm going to take Cleveland. That defense is playing lights out. I'm not really too worried about who's playing quarterback. Gardner Minshew on the other side, and the way that Cleveland defense is playing. After getting to witness how they play and what they're doing, I think Cleveland there. Atlanta at Tampa Bay -2.5. Tampa Bay is looking for a little redemption after last week, and I think they get it. I think all in all, Tampa Bay is a better team than Atlanta. What's his name? Baker Mayfield's having a resurgence over there in Tampa. I really like what they're being able to do. I think him being off the radar and kind of out of the limelight and not all the focus on him has really helped him out. And he's doing good things over there. I like how he's playing and what he's got going on. So give me Tampa Bay. Detroit at Baltimore. Baltimore's a 3-point favorite. Give me Detroit for the upset. I'm going to take them for the win. Baltimore's offense is absolutely unimpressive with Lamar Jackson being a thrower of the football. His wide receivers and tight ends can't catch the ball. The offense just looks stale and monotone, really. Detroit plays really good defense, and they have a high-flying offense. They should be one of the top 3 or 4 Super Bowl favorites right now. They're humming on all cylinders, and I like it to be Detroit and San Francisco in the NFC Championship game. So, Las Vegas -3 at Chicago. Justin Fields is probably not going to play. I'll take Vegas there. Arizona at Seattle. Seattle's a 3.5-point favorite. I'll take Seattle there. Arizona's run of being able to keep it close seems to have gone away. Maybe all the luck's run out. The wells run dry. Whatever the case may be. Give me Seattle. Pittsburgh's at the Rams. The Rams are -3. It's really a coin flip. I would take the Rams. Again, you're looking at another offense over in Pittsburgh. It's just very vanilla. There's no design to it. It's all just straight up and down. They're calling for Matt Canada to be fired heavy in Pittsburgh, so we'll see what happens with that. But I'll take the Rams -3. Chargers at Kansas City. Kansas City's a 5.5-point favorite. I like the Chargers to cover that. I think Kansas City wins the game, but I do like the Chargers to keep it close. Green Bay -1 at Denver. I'll take Green Bay there. Denver's just a hot mess. They're uber talented. If you look at them on paper based on, draft status and what was expected of some of these players coming out of college and how they played in college, I don't know if it's the thin mountain air or, being a mile high in the air. I don't know what's going on out there. But they've had a couple of different coaches come in, and none of them can seem to get it going out there. So I will definitely take Green Bay in that. You got Miami is at Philadelphia. Philadelphia is a 2.5-point favorite. I'm going to take Miami for the upset. Take them to win across the board. Philly's defense is not playing up to the standard that it was last year, and this is another offense that it's not the same, right? They were high-flying, high-powered last year. They've changed play callers and they've changed play design, and it just doesn't look the same. It doesn't feel the same, and it doesn't act the same. So I'm going to take Miami. San Francisco's a 6.5-point favorite going to Minnesota on Monday night. And I like San Francisco. Minnesota, again, bad football team. The defense has not been playing well for a couple of years now. And so I think this is kind of a get-right game for San Francisco. We got to get back, get the wheels greased back up on the track after last week's debacle. So, give me San Francisco. That being said, that's your weekly picks. I really appreciate you guys being here and support me. Just remember to like and subscribe and share. Put your comments in the box. If you agree with me, great. If you disagree with me, even better. I love to argue and talk football in any kind of sport. So if you're a Diamondbacks fan or an Astros fan, hit me up. If you're a Cowgirls fan, we can definitely get with it. But do it all in the comments, man. It helps me out. So again, like, subscribe, and share. Let all your people know that this show's here.